the first one just says population. So this is all the members of a set. The population, all the members of the set. So just like as a little example, let's say my population was the entire United States. That would literally be every person that lives in the United States of America. That would be my population. Okay, now what your sample is part of a population. So let's say my population was the entire United States, but maybe my sample could just be like all the people that live in Michigan or something like that. So it's part of a group. Now, the reason you have a population and a sample, when we're going to talk about these statistics, it's not usually feasible to ask every member of a population a question or study every single member of a population. So you use a sample, a smaller group, and then use that sample to make conclusions about the group at large. Okay, so this says you can get good statistical information about a population, like an entire population, by studying a sample of the population. And then what we're going to talk about here, these are the different sampling types. There's 4 of them, and then I just kind of have like a little example of each. Okay, so the first one is called a convenience sample, and basically the subjects chosen are convenient in some way to the researcher or whoever's collecting the data. I'll just put researcher. So basically you're going to get your sample because it's easy to do. All right. So my little example that goes with that, it says you want to sample a group of high schoolers to represent Homestead High School. So you asked the 25 students, and this is set up for you guys, I guess, in your 4th period math class, okay? So that's convenient. I'm not making any effort to go to other classrooms, and I'm just sampling the people that are around me, so that's convenient. Okay, just in general, do you think this would be a good or bad way to sample a population? Okay, so immediately this was a visceral reaction is bad. Okay, so in general, this is not usually the greatest way. Why would this be bad? Yeah.
You're not really likely to get a bunch of people like across different grades, really.
Right? Yeah. Okay, so this would probably be a lot of people in the same age bracket. If you're all in like you guys are all in an honors class, like that's not representative of the entire population and at Homestead as a whole. So that would not necessarily be the greatest way to sample for the school. Okay, so that's just a little example there. Now, the second type, this is called self-selected. So in this situation, the subjects that you're going to study here are going to volunteer in some way. And that could literally just be like showing up to do something. That could be responding to something. It doesn't have to be physical in person. My little example here just says, teacher wonders if all their students like their teaching style. Teacher sends out a link to all the students asking them to respond whether or not they like the teaching style or not. That is self-selected. I'm not saying I'm going to give you an F if you don't respond to this question. So it's just the people that are going to respond to the question that are going to give you the feedback. So they're volunteering their information in some way. So if it's self-selected, do you think this would, like for this example, would this tend to be good or bad, or what do we think? This one, not necessarily the best. It's not always bad. Why would this be bad? Or maybe you're super passionate and you're like, I hate how you teach. You know what I mean? Like, usually if you have a volunteer in some way, they're really interested in it or they're really not interested in it. So usually if you're volunteering, you have some kind of passion about whatever's going on. Okay, now the next one, this is called a systematic sample. Okay, so here subjects are selected at regular intervals. So you're going to somehow select your subjects at regular intervals. Okay, we're already fighting. I haven't even read the example. Okay, so regular intervals. Okay, so this is what it says as the little example. You want to know what percent of students at Homestead prefer Pepsi to Coke. You get a complete list of all the students from guidance, alphabetized, and you select every 15th student on that list and ask them the question. So that's the regular interval. It's every 15 people on the list. So would we think this is maybe good or bad? This is usually, this one tends to be more, this tends to be better representative of the population because everyone's equally likely here and we're going to select at regular intervals. Okay, now the last type is totally random. And what we're going to do here is everyone in the population is equally likely to be selected for the sample here. So every single person in the population that you're trying to study is going to be equally likely to be selected. There's a bunch of different ways that you could do this. A lot of times this would be done with like a random number generator with like a computer or a calculator or some kind. You could literally for this put everybody's name in a hat and draw people's names out. That's another way you could do a random sample. But this one just says, I want to know what percentage of voters in a district favor a tax to pay for a school construction project. That's not biased at all. Okay, I assign every voter, so I don't know how many people this is. So it says from 1 to n. N would be the total number of people. I use a random number generator to generate 30 unique values from 1 to n and survey the voters whose name match up with that number. Okay, so in a random sample, do you think this is a pretty good representation of a population? Yeah. This one's probably of all of them. The systematic and the random are usually more on the, these would be good statistics to use side. The other ones can still give you information, but it might not be a good way to make a general reference about an entire population. Okay, now just a quick at the bottom. It says samples vary, obviously, in how well they reflect a population. We were just talking about this. A sample has what we call a bias when part of a population is either overrepresented, and I just started to spell that wrong, or underrepresented. Okay, so in some way, I'm overrepresenting or underrepresenting a population or part of the population here. And this is just going to say a bias is a systematic error that's introduced by your sampling method. So some way that you put that sample together is going to affect the result. Okay. Now, I'm going to give you guys some situations here. You're going to see if you can tell me which sampling method is being used and whether or not you think this underrepresents or overrepresents. Okay. Now, for example 1, I have 3 different scenarios that they're going to use, but they all attach to this situation at the top. So this says a newspaper wants to find out what percent of the city's population favors a property tax increase to raise money for local parks. I didn't even read it yet. Give me a second. All right. What is the sampling method, and then does this have bias? Okay, this says newspaper article on the tax increase invites readers to express their opinions on the newspaper's website. This is self-selected, which several of you just screamed for no reason. We could raise our hands, that would be nice, but whatever. Okay, so this is self-selected because you're choosing to respond to this newspaper article by submitting an opinion to the newspaper's website. Okay, yes or no, do you think there's a bias in the way this is being done? Okay, now if I say yes, can we just raise your hand, like tell me why this would be, or just, and there, you could give me multiple reasons. Why is this bias? Oh, Ryan, you want to tell me. Why is this bias?
Because the volunteers chose to respond, so the opposing side respond.
Okay, right. Okay, so I would say here you're having people that are choosing to respond to this. So it could be that you're like I'm just gonna write. You're really passionate, like one way or the other. So it's not just, you have a really, like, you really want to pay taxes for this, or you really don't want to pay taxes for this. So you could be really passionate one way or the other. Why else would this be biased? Like, what's another way that this is not maybe the best way? How am I overrepresenting or underrepresenting the population? Okay, yeah. Okay, so this is only going out, you would have to get the newspaper. So if you don't get the newspaper, you're not even going to see this. So I'm underrepresenting anybody that wouldn't get a newspaper. There's another thing I was thinking about here too. So this is a newspaper article and you got to respond to the newspaper's website. What would I have to participate in this? Yeah, you don't, okay, so you would have to have like a phone or computer or internet access. So if you don't have any of that stuff, you're automatically excluded. So those people, anybody that doesn't have the phone, computer, internet, they're underrepresented. If you don't get the newspaper, you're not going to see the article. If you don't have any of those tools, you can't respond on the website. So we're underrepresenting people there as well. So this is probably not the greatest way to go about this. Okay, now, same situation. Do we want to pay tax for the parks? Here's another method. It says a reporter interviews people leaving the city's largest park. This is convenience. They're just standing there at the park. I always spell this wrong. It's convenience. I think that's spelled right. Okay. Now, does this introduce a bias? Why? Yes. Okay. So if we're talking about taxes about the park and you're interviewing people at the park, these are people that use the park. So we're overrepresenting people who use the park. You're not representing the people that don't use the park, and everybody in the city would have to pay the tax. And maybe these are people that are, they're at home, they don't go there for whatever reason. And you're only asking people who would probably favor it in that situation. If you're using the park, you'd probably be okay with the tax to improve it. Okay. Now, the last one says, survey service calls every 50th listing from a local phone book. Oh my goodness. Lily, what do you think? This is systematic. Okay, what do you guys think about this one? Bias?
No.
Okay, I would say not so much right here, but would anybody say, yes, it's bias? Exactly, okay. Now, I would take yes or no here if you were doing this, as long as you defend it. If you said yes, you are underrepresenting people who don't have a phone. So honestly, of the three, this one's probably the best way to get a good statistical information. Because, I don't know, not everybody has a phone, but most people have a phone at this point. But you are underrepresenting people that don't have a phone. But if you said no, this is not biased, I would take that here too, because I think this is, of the three, this is the best. Okay. Now, last one is the same type of question, but it just doesn't go with this newspaper scenario, or this park tax scenario. So this says a high school with 150 seniors. Okay, so all the seniors are included here. Want to find the percent of seniors who plan to attend college. A list of every senior is obtained, and each student is assigned a number from 1 to 150. So everybody would have a number. 40 random unique numbers are generated. The students whose numbers correspond to the numbers generated are asked, and the results are recorded. So what method am I using here? This is totally random. This is not systematic because it's not like every fifth person or whatever. This is totally random. We're doing a random number generator here. Or if I said I put every kid's name in a bowl and drew out 40 people's names, that would be another way we could do this. What do you guys think about a bias here? No, I honestly couldn't argue for yes here. There's no way to argue that. It's totally random. The whole population is the entire senior class. You're going to get 40 people, which is a really good sample out of 150. And so I would not say there's any bias in this one. All right, now you've got your sample methods. Now, once you have your sample, you're going to study the people in some way, and there's 3 of these. So I'm going to give these to you right now here real quick. The first one, it's going to say in an observational study. I think I spelled that correctly. Okay, in an observational study, what you do is you measure or you just observe members of the sample in such a way that they are not affected by the study. So observational, you're not going to interact with these people in any way. You're just going to observe their behavior and write it down. Okay, you're not going to affect what they do in any way. All right, the second one, it says this should say controlled experiment. What you're going to do, you're going to divide a sample into 2 groups. So you're going to have your sample already ready to go. We're going to divide them into 2 groups. And then what you do, you impose some kind of a treatment, or you have one of the groups do something. And then the other group, they call that the control group, they don't do anything differently. So treatment doesn't necessarily have to be a medication or so. It's just one group is going to do something, one group is going to be normal. All right, and then you compare the effect. And then the very last one is going to say in a survey. Survey, you ask every member of your sample a set of questions, or this could just, it doesn't have to be like multiple questions. It could just be you just ask one question. That could be the cases. Okay, now I'm going to give you guys some scenarios and you're going to see, actually I'm going to tell you a couple more things before we do that, and then we're going to do situations on the back and see if you can figure out which study method. Okay, now I'm going to write this at the top. This is going to say a poorly designed study. So as we go through these, if you don't think the way they set their study up was a good idea, that can result in unreliable statistics. I'm just going to write stats. All right, if we don't have a good method that we're going to study these people with in our sample, then you might not be able to use the statistics. Okay, and it says you should always analyze the study's method before you make some general conclusions about your population. Now, it does say if a study is well designed, you can assume the results represent the entire population. And in this case, you can just make general conclusions or inferences about the population. If you feel like whatever the study sets up with your sample and everything, is this a good way to actually make conclusions about a general population? Okay, so I'm just going to give you some situations. And I'm going to ask you, can you tell me the sampling method, and then also can you tell me the study? So the sampling was the self-select, convenience, random, and systematic, and the study is going to be observational, controlled, or a survey. So this says, professor is conducting research about the effects of ice cream on a person's dream activity. Professor divides one of her classes, which has 30 students, randomly into 2 groups. Over a period of 8 weeks, one group eats ice cream before going to sleep and the other does not. The students all wear monitoring devices while sleeping, and a research team collects the monitoring devices and records dream activity on each student. This is kind of tricky. What kind of sample method am I using here?
Convenience.
This is actually, it's this one's convenience, and it's just because it's the teacher's class. Like, they're not going out and grabbing people from all over the university here. So this is a convenience. Now, even though they're going to split them into the different groups randomly, they do say that in the problem. They say they're going to split them into randomly, but they're not getting the sample randomly. They're just sampling this one class. Okay, what study method that I just, of those 3? Controlled. This is controlled. All right, and then if you remember the definition, the treatment being imposed here is that some of these people are eating ice cream and some of these people are not. Okay, so if I studied this and collected data from this, do you think these statistics would be good for making inferences about a general population here? So, what would maybe be not the greatest thing about this? Okay, okay. So you can argue these either way. But I might say the age is really limited here. If you're in a college class, you're probably only between, you're probably between like 18 and 25 at the most. So you're not getting like a general thing about everybody. Now, if your study was only about college students, this might be a good sample, but they're not really specific about that in the question. So age could be something. What else might be? This is a really small, you're talking about 15 people eating ice cream and 15 people not. So to make a general observation, this is a really small sample. Okay, so you might find something here, get a larger sample and ask more people, get more people involved in different age groups. But I would say maybe not the greatest setup for a study for that situation. Okay, now my second situation here literally just says students in a science class record the heights of bean plants as they grow. So could I make a general conclusion about how bean plants grow from this situation? What sampling method am I using here? Just using all the kids in this third grade class. Or what, it doesn't even say what grade it is. It just says in a science class. Yeah, this is kind of tricky too, but again, this is just convenience. Because you're not doing every third kid's bean plant, you're doing the whole class, and it's convenience because it's this class is doing it, okay? What study method are we doing here? This is just observational. You're going to measure the heights of these bean plants. Would this be a decent way to collect information about how bean plants grow? I think this is pretty decent. I mean, you could maybe make a. You guys don't think so?
No.
Okay. Well, why'd you say no? Well, that doesn't necessarily. It's convenient.
It could be in a controlled environment if they're all growing in the same environment.
Okay, so maybe you don't. Maybe you say. Maybe you put giant letters and you write no, and you say. Now, okay, where are these plants at? Are they on a windowsill? Are they outside? Like, where are these plants? They don't tell us. What state are these plants? Where are these plants at? Okay, like, are these plants in Indiana? Is it currently right now? Because maybe they would be frozen and they would break. I don't know because the weather's been so weird. But where are these plants at? Where are they outside, inside? How are they measuring them? I actually did this in third grade and we put them on a windowsill in the classroom. But you could argue this both ways. To me, I would say it's probably pretty decent. Would it be, if this was in Indiana, would it be a good argument for plants in California? Probably not. But it depends on what your population is here. But I feel like you could argue this one both ways. As long as you can back up your information, I'll take your answer. Okay. Now this one says, student council members ask every 10th student in the lunch line if they like the cafeteria food. What kind of a sampling method am I using here? This is every 10th person, so at regular intervals, so this is called that systematic. Now, which one of the study methods are we using here? This is a survey, because you're just asking people a question. Okay, what do you think about the data here? Would this be decent? Like, if I want to know what people's opinion about the cafeteria food is in the school, okay, why no?
But it's about the one.
Yes, okay, so this is good. No, not that you're arguing, but, okay, now, to me, I would say this could be decent if you're only looking at people that buy lunch. They don't say that, though, in the directions at all. Who's being underrepresented here? Yeah, okay, this would be, you could say underrepresent the people who pack, right? Right, but they don't, right, exactly, but they don't eat the cafeteria, so does their opinion matter? Yeah. Oh, did you guys hear what she said? Say that again. Yeah, but they're only surveying people in the lunch line, so she's saying that maybe they pack because they don't like it. Okay, so I think these people, so you're not getting a good opinion. You're not getting a good opinion there. You could argue that one both ways.
Yeah, so what is a good way to do that?
Ask every single.
You would have to, honestly, if you were doing that, put, like, I do the random number generator.
If they've ever tried it before, and then
Maybe that's
out of
part-
people that say yes,
Right, that could be part of the survey.
Good idea, Ryan. It would be like a-
See, you could design your own experiment.
Get that verified.
Yeah. All right. Okay, now I have one last one and then I'll be quiet. Okay, this says a pharmaceutical company asked for volunteers to test a new drug for high blood pressure. We're going to do this last. This is passionate. Okay. Pharmaceutical company asked for volunteers to test new medication for high blood pressure. Volunteers are randomly assigned to two groups. One group will receive the new drug. The other group will get a placebo. That's like a sugar pill. It doesn't affect you. And it says the researchers will monitor the blood pressure of the volunteers for 6 weeks. What kind of sample is this? This is self-selected because they're volunteering. It's convenient for the people running the study for sure. Now, what kind of study is this? This one's controlled. Because you have two groups. One's going to get the medication, one's not. Okay, what do you think about the statistics for this one? Okay, I feel like that it's one of those where I feel like you could argue this one both ways. There's not a lot of information. Like, I feel like this needs to be more explained. Like, you could just have people volunteering for this. Sometimes they pay people to participate in studies and things like this with new medications. So, do we know the people's age? Do they have high blood pressure? Yeah, placebo effect. Yeah, that is a real thing. But like, how are they selecting these volunteers? Like, did they put a letter out and say, "Hey, if you have high blood pressure, please contact"? It just doesn't say enough information about that. So I would say it depends on what people you have in this sample. Like, how did you advertise this? So again, I don't know. These statistics could be good, could be bad. We just don't have enough information. Okay, is anybody having a question?